Mormonism was born in the USA.
It originates in America. It starts here.
From humble beginnings in upstate New York,
this was the opening of the heavens,
to a global empire 14 million strong. The Church of Latter-day Saints is a great American success story.
We're here to serve.
They've created the world's largest genealogy library.
We want to thread the human family through all generations.
Built temples off limits to non-believers.
Mormons don't even talk about what goes on in the temple.
Traded polygamy for eternal marriage.
We're married not just for this life, but for all eternity.
Sent young missionaries to all corners of the earth.
The white shirt and tie and badge, that's our brand.
And expelled those who had broken the rules.
I couldn't believe that what I did was so wrong.
This is the little-known story of Mormons in America. Mormonism has lived the American dream. Less than 200 years since it was founded in America, it boasts 14.4 million followers in 170 countries. There are more Mormons in the world today than there are Jews. 6 million in America alone. 3/4 of those live in the western states, with 30% in Utah, clustered around the city founded by their forefathers. Increasingly, Mormons are taking their place on the national stage.
I accept your nomination for President of the United States.
Mormons have certainly been in the spotlight recently, and Mitt Romney is the primary reason. But Mormons have sort of been moving into a notoriety in a variety of areas, in entertainment, in sports, in scholarship, in the arts. So they've sort of come on the scene.
But few non-Mormons know the core beliefs of the church. To understand that, you need to go right back to its mysterious beginnings. To a hidden corner of upstate New York. In a sun-dappled glade.
We're in the sacred grove. The prophet Joseph Smith, a young boy at 14 years of age, living not far from here, came into this grove. And this was the first time he knelt and uttered a prayer, and where God the Father and his son Jesus Christ appeared to that boy. This was in the spring of 1820.
Mormons believe Joseph Smith asks the Lord which church he should join, but he's told none of them is the true church of Christ. Instead, it will be up to him to restore the true Christian faith. A faith that began over 2,000 years before, right here on American soil.
This is the cradle of the Restoration. If you think about magnificent spiritual moments in the history of the world, this is one of those. This was the opening of the heavens.
Years later, Mormon history teaches an angel called Moroni shows Joseph where to find a set of golden plates on which the Mormon gospel is inscribed. Joseph retrieves the plates and transcribes them into the Book of Mormon. He says he then returns the plates to the angel Moroni. Today, the story written in the Holy Book is not well known outside the faith. But every summer, in Palmyra, New York, there is a rare chance to see it reenacted at the Hill Pageant.
We came to see the pageant.
Definitely here for the pageant.
Our kids are, they're not 100% on board yet, but we think by the end of tonight, they'll be there.
In a spectacle most non-Mormons never get to see, stories from the Book of Mormon will be brought to life on an outdoor stage. A a rare glimpse behind the scenes.
What's your role again? Noah Innocent.
Reveals a costume and makeup team transforming modern-day Mormons into the ancient Israelites who Mormons believe came to America in 600 BC.
All right, you're good. Awesome.
Every one of the 1,000-plus staff, crew, and actors is a volunteer. By working for free, they're enacting a key tenet of their faith.
I love serving the people here. We feel like we're helping other people learn more about the Savior and what he did, what his mission was all about. And so it's a very spiritual experience, and it just makes you happy to be here.
The pageant tells the story of an ancient people who fled to Israel in 600 BC. They build a boat and sail to America.
This family believed that God was leading them to a new promised land.
2,000 years before Christopher Columbus, Mormons believe Israelites settled America. Centuries later, they're visited by the resurrected Jesus Christ. Christ instructs his people to record their history on golden plates. The last member of this Israelite race buries the plates on the hill Cumorah, the very site where the pageant takes place.
The plates were buried in 421 of the Common Era. 1,400 years later, Joseph Smith discovered them.
In 1830, 3 years after receiving the plates, Joseph Smith publishes the Book of Mormon.
It was a time of religious turmoil in the United States. All sorts of religions were popping up. People were dissatisfied with what they had and were looking for something new.
In Palmyra, Joseph's exciting new religion soon gains followers. But the Lord has grander plans for Mormonism.
Joseph Smith received a revelation saying that they were to move into the West, out to the very edges of American settlement, which were in Missouri at that time, and there build a city.
But because of their unusual beliefs, Mormons are not welcome in Missouri or Illinois, or anywhere else they try to settle.
The inhabitants said, "You have to leave." When they said no, they said, "We'll drive you out." So they ripped off the roofs of their houses, they beat people, they killed their cattle.
In 1844, the backlash against Mormons comes to a head when an angry mob murders Joseph Smith.
A new leader emerged, someone who was close to Joseph Smith, named Brigham Young.
Brigham Young becomes the new Mormon president and leads his followers further west away from civilization.
So in 1847, the Mormons crossed the plains, worked their way through the Rocky Mountains, and chose the Salt Lake Valley as a place where they could settle. It's in a desolate region of the country, thought to be uninhabitable.
With a spirit of defiance forged by their grueling trek, in Utah, the Mormons prosper. But one controversial practice threatens their very existence.
In 1842, Joseph Smith began practicing polygamy. The government was so concerned about this practice that they confiscated all of the property of the church, including their temples, and denied Mormons all their civil rights.
Temples are invaded. Mormons rounded up. The new empire of the West is on a collision course with Washington.
They had to make a choice: survival versus destruction.
The Mormon Church chooses compromise, banning polygamy in 1890. But even today, pockets of polygamy's true believers remain.
He called me on the phone and told me to get the house all clean and get his suit ready. And I knew right then that he was getting another wife.
As Washington is to the Federation, Salt Lake City, Utah is to the Mormon Empire.
Salt Lake City, commercially and culturally the lodestone of the West, a tribute to the foresight and wisdom of its founder, Brigham Young.
If Joseph Smith is Mormonism's visionary, Brigham Young is its entrepreneur. When the pioneers arrive here in 1847, they encounter a barren desert. But under Young's leadership, a new civilization emerges from the dust. At its center, the Great Temple that rises like a fortress into the heavens.
It represents a lot of sacrifice for those who came here. They suffered a lot as they came here, and then once they got here, there was nothing, and they built everything from scratch.
In Utah, the Mormons build universities, concert halls, towering government buildings, and lay the groundwork for big businesses. Today, the church's company, Deseret Management Corporation, is one of the largest ranchland owners in America. And the church is a major player in every industry, from banking and insurance to media, hotels, and retail. As far back as 1997, Time magazine estimates church assets at more than $30 billion, a fortune due largely to the mandatory 10% income tax, or tithe, that Mormons pay to their church.
The church, because of the dedicated tithing of its members, is extremely well-funded. The church hierarchy thinks and operates like a corporation.
But hidden behind the corporate facade, there's a less well-known world of Mormon industry. Welfare Square, Salt Lake City, is the nexus of the LDS welfare system.
We're standing in the middle of one of our 143 storehouses that we have in Central, South, and North America.
Mormon storehouses are laid out just like supermarkets, except there are no cash registers. Any member of the church considered in need can fill their baskets here, free of charge. Most of the workers are volunteers who've been called to service by their local church leader.
We're here to serve, not only here in the bakery, but we're here on earth to serve.
The brand on all of the products produced within our facilities is Deseret. Deseret means honeybee. And so for us, it's a symbol of individuals working together for the common good of the community.
The way that we fund this whole operation is once a month, all the members of the church skip 2 meals on the first Sunday of the month. We call that Fast Sunday. And the money that they would have otherwise spent on those 2 meals, they donate to the church, and those funds finance this whole operation.
But the LDS welfare system doesn't only provide for Mormons. Since 1985, the church has provided over $1 billion in aid and disaster relief worldwide. For their own emergencies, all church members are instructed to set aside 3 months' worth of supplies.
The Mormon practice of keeping emergency supplies comes from pioneer times. It was wisdom to have enough food to carry you through an extra season if you needed it.
While the U.S. government keeps a strategic petroleum reserve, the Mormon church stockpiles grain.
We can store about 300,000 bushels in this facility. We got a lot of people to feed in case of emergencies.
But the Mormon spirit of preparedness looks beyond mere seasonal fluctuations. 130 years before the Cold War, Mormons may well have been the original doomsday preppers.
My family always had a year's supply of food in the home. And I grew up during the 1980s, so there was this sort of Cold War gloom that hung over it, and we were preparing for the apocalypse. I was always raised to understand that we are in the latter moments of time, that God has a plan for the world, that it began with the Garden of Eden, unfolded throughout sacred history, and is now wrapping up, and that there will be an end.
Apocalyptic belief is not confined to Mormonism, but one practice adopted by early Mormons singled them out as different. In the early 1840s, Joseph Smith preaches a doctrine of plural marriage.
The reason he gave is that his task was to restore in modern times the practices of the Bible, including the practices of the ancient patriarchs who were polygamists. So Joseph Smith himself took about 30 wives.
Public outrage is so intense that by 1890, the Mormon Church is forced to end the practice. But a breakaway sect, condemned by mainstream Mormonism, continues polygamy today.
These fundamentalists, usually they're called FLDS, Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, thought that the Mormons were abandoning a very strict divine commandment. This group resisted and went on practicing polygamy.
In a barren stretch of desert along the Utah-Arizona border lies the FLDS stronghold of Colorado City. A time capsule of Mormon life as it was over 100 years ago. Closed off and hidden from the rest of America. Like the official Mormon Church, the FLDS is headed by a male prophet. The reigning prophet is Warren Jeffs. In 2011, he was sentenced to life plus 20 years for 2 felony counts of child sexual assault. Jeffs reportedly has over 80 wives, many of them underage. He continues to control the sect from behind bars. Jeffs sits at the apex of a patriarchal hierarchy where men he claims are favored by God are awarded the wives and children of men deemed unworthy. Unwanted males are cast out.
I sat there in my car. I had 20 bucks left, and I was out of gas. I had no food, and I decided, well, I'm either gonna kill myself, or I'm gonna kill the people that ruined my life.
Private Detective Sam Brower dares to go behind the curtain of the hostile gated community of Colorado City. He tries to help the young men who've been exiled from the fundamentalist Mormon sect.
They're kicked out of the community, and it creates this real subculture of young guys that are really lost and don't have the skills to get by in the world.
I'm Carlos Holm. I left Colorado City when I was 18 because I had no future there.
Carlos Holm escaped the FLDS several years ago, but his mother and 3 sisters are still there. He wants to rescue them, but fears they've been brainwashed.
I haven't talked to my mom and sisters since the day I left, simply because they will not talk to me, because I'm now an apostate and outsider to the church, and I'm an agent of the devil.
Things go from bad to worse when Carlos hears his father has also been exiled.
My dad never had multiple wives because he wasn't a prominent man in the church. Even though he tried very hard to become a polygamist.
Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints believe that God himself is a polygamist and that men must follow his example. When he hears his dad has been cast out, Carlos mounts a desperate search for his mother and sisters, fearing they'll be traded to another man. He films the search on his cell phone.
Is anybody here? Hello? Wow. They must have just cleaned out the rooms. None of my sister's clothes are here, so my sisters have already been moved somewhere.
Carlos suspects his mother and sisters have been traded to another man. But some women have escaped the polygamist sect.
I'm Georgina Broadbent. I'm 49 years old. I used to be a polygamous wife.
Georgina Broadbent is raised in a polygamist family and marries into the Colorado City sect as a teenager.
I was 18 when I was married. We didn't have a say in who we married.
Georgina has 12 children with her husband, who goes on to have 8 more children with his second wife.
Women are thought of as just mothers that have babies. Women don't have a say in anything. They're not supposed to have an opinion.
Though Georgina was unhappy, she was too afraid to leave. But her daughters weren't.
Suzanne had left. And I wasn't allowed to talk to him. And then when Hillary started running away, probably 4 or 5 years after most of the other children had left, I just didn't want to be there anymore. Things were just falling apart, and I just felt like I wasn't there for my kids anymore. They were getting abused.
Eventually, Georgina finds the courage to escape too. One day in 2008, with the help of police, she rescues her remaining children and leaves Colorado City.
I was actually happy. I had all my kids. I could talk to my kids now. All the older ones that had left, they'd called and were so glad that I was out. And just this last week, all my children went camping. I hadn't seen any of my kids it's been 12 years. We were all never been together.
Now Georgina has her kids back. She won't be letting the FLDS interfere in their lives any longer.
I don't need to have somebody tell me that my children belong to the church. I feel like my children were given to me by God to take care of.
Georgina's story has a happy ending. But while polygamy is condemned by the mainstream LDS church, it still haunts Mormonism.
Many of us have polygamous ancestors. Polygamy remains in Mormon scripture. It remains a point of doctrine for very orthodox mainstream Mormons even, that there might be polygamy in the afterlife. There are other progressive Mormons who reject that entirely. So it is a persistent shaping tension in Mormon life. It remains with us.
Mainstream Mormons follow a more conventional marriage model.
I got the tux, I got the ring, so I think I'm good.
But the ritual that binds them is one many Americans will find surprising.
There's no procession down an aisle. There are no bridesmaids and flower girls.
Until 1978, people of black African descent were forbidden from becoming Mormon priests. Even today, only 3% of American Mormons are black. But Tommy Bousquet, a Mormon living in LA, says the current LDS church welcomes everyone, regardless of race.
Probably for some people it's still an issue, but a church teaches that there's no discrimination. We're all brothers and sisters, and we should love one another the same.
Well, good morning, brothers and sisters. For Mormons like Tommy, Sunday is a day of worship. Their churches are open to anyone, but their temples are a different story.
Temples seem to non-Mormons as a secret place. Why can't you talk about what goes on in the temple? What is really going on? Why can't anyone go into the temple?
Unlike a Christian cathedral, Mormon temples are closed to the public. Only Mormons can enter, and only those deemed worthy enough to earn a temple recommend.
To go to the temple, you have to prepare yourself, you have to make yourself worthy, you have to be interviewed to see if you are living the basic commandments. And you go in there, it's very quiet, people whisper, It's very ritualistic. People dress in special clothing they call temple clothing, all in white.
For Mormons, it's forbidden to discuss what goes on inside the temple. This is because they are considered the most sacred buildings on earth.
Mormons are trying desperately to create a sacred space where to enter it, you have to prepare yourself. And one way of creating a sacred space is one, to make it beautiful, to make it clean, and to make it hard to enter.
The closest most people get to entering a temple is this scale model.
This beautiful room over here is the celestial room, and that is symbolic of what we believe is the highest degree in heaven.
It's not so much what's in the temple that's secret. It's what Mormons do when they're in there. In this room, Mormons perform baptisms for the dead, where living church members are immersed on behalf of non-Mormon ancestors.
For example, if I had a great-great-great-grandmother who never knew Mormonism or had never even had a Christian baptism, I could help her qualify for heaven by being baptized in her stead.
In 2012, the practice ran into controversy when it was revealed that Mormons had baptized Jewish Holocaust victims. The church has since issued an edict to ban the proxy baptism of Jews who died in the Holocaust. To enable Mormons to track long-lost ancestors and baptize them, the church has amassed the world's largest genealogy library here in Salt Lake City. It contains billions of digital records.
It's here where we gather information about the human family. Families are quintessential to Latter-day Saints. We believe that all are children of our Heavenly Father, and so we want to thread that family connection through all societies as much as we can.
Mormons may believe in baptizing the dead, but it's converting the living to their faith that they're most known for. That task largely falls to the Legion of Mormon missionaries, 50,000 across the world, who draw an estimated 300,000 new converts to Mormonism each year.
In early days, the missionary system was not quite as routine as it is now, where they would send the missionaries out individually, and they would go for 2 or 3 months when they could be spared from their farms.
These days, missions are considered expected for young male Mormons and optional for women. Each mission lasts up to 2 years.
There's no dating, there's no television, there's no computer games, there's no media consumption. Mormon missionaries are expected to stay wholly focused on missionary service.
21-year-old Brandon Payne has recently returned from a mission in New York City.
It was hard work. All day, every day, you're out talking to people. Everyone's in a hurry and everyone's in a rush. A lot of people, you know, they don't want to be talking to missionaries, and so just finding somebody who wanted to talk to you was just a relief. Like, I really struggled with that, but I think just persistently doing it, I think God helps you when you do that.
It's hard, but in a way, this is the initiation into Mormonism. This is the time when you prove your stuff, and it's like any kind of difficult test. This leads to a strong commitment.
For Brandon, that mission had an added benefit. While serving in New York, he met fellow missionary Alyssa Dunnigan. Today, they're getting married in the San Diego Temple.
You look very pretty. Ever since I was young, I've always, known that I wanted to get married in the temple, and I wanted to be sealed to my spouse.
As with all temple ceremonies, only authorized Mormons can attend. And there's another big difference.
When Mormons marry in a temple, they believe that that marriage will last not just for time, but for eternity.
When Mormons tie the knot, there's no "here comes the bride" or "till death do us part."
You're kneeling down across from the person you're getting married to, and it's a very short ceremony. Just a few words are spoken, and that's it.
Marriage holds a central place in Mormon theology. It's almost parallel to baptism. It's a rite that's required to be able to enter into certain levels of heaven, according to Mormon theology.
For this reason, Mormons tend to marry and date within their faith. That narrows the dating pool to around 1% of the population. So sometimes Mormons need help to meet potential partners.
I'm dating 13 different women at the same time. It's different.
How's it going?
Good, how are you? A lot of Mormons were nervous about this becoming like a Mormons Gone Wild type of situation.
Most Mormons follow a modest dress code to show their commitment to the moral guidelines of their faith. But modest clothing also helps cover what all devout Mormons wear beneath their clothes. Long shorts and a cotton t-shirt known as temple garments and considered sacred.
So the way an observant Jew might wear a kippah at all times to remind himself of his promises, of his faith obligations. Mormons wear underclothing, very simple underclothing that reminds them of their obligations to the faith.
Mormons' modest dress and belief in chastity means when they date, they do it differently to the rest of America.
Should we see the comments?
That's part of the reason Aaron Elton launched an online series called The Mormon Bachelor in 2010.
The Mormon Bachelor is our version of a dating show. The basic concept would be find a husband or a wife in about a month.
Chris Barber is the bachelor. He's currently dating 13 Mormon girls.
I never saw myself looking for love this way, but you know what? I hadn't found the one that I wanted to marry and get to that point through my other avenues, so why not try something new?
Tell us how you found out about the Mormon Bachelor and why you decided to apply.
Today, Chris will be dating 24-year-old Kirsty Farrell.
I think Chris and I are a good match because I feel like we have a lot of things in common.
Because of the restrictions of their faith, there will be no alcohol, no revealing attire, and no sex on this date.
I signed up and sure enough, it ended up working out. So I really
Mormons marry much earlier than most Americans, usually in their early 20s.
Mormonism is clear in its teachings on chastity before marriage. So this means Mormons have very short wedding engagements.
I've lived there for 5.5 years.
At 32, despite running a dating show,
It just depends on where things
Aaron is still single and still abiding by the law of chastity.
There's been a lot of times where I've thought, I can't do this anymore. It's too hard, but I want to get married for all eternity someday in the temple, and then I need to be living this way in order to do that. That's kept me going, really.
This is super rich. It's way good though.
It is scrumdiddlyumptious.
Scrumdiddlyumptious.
We're not like a separate species. We're not a separate superhuman or weaker human. We just have different standards.
No one embodies Mormon standards more than missionaries. So what happens when a former missionary tries to give their image a controversial makeover?
It's pretty much expected in the Mormon community that if you are a male, 19 years of age, that you already go on a mission.
When Chad Hardy embarks on a mission to California as a 19-year-old, he feels he's fulfilling a proud family tradition.
Being raised Mormon, you're raised not just by your family, but you're raised in a community. You do kind of grow up feeling like you're part of something, and not just something, but something amazing. My whole life, I've heard stories about my dad's mission, my grandpa's mission, and these stories were so fascinating and magical to me as a kid. It almost seemed like my whole life that was my purpose, to go on a mission.
But Chad finds the regimentation of his mission difficult to adapt to.
Missions are presented to young Latter-day Saints as a glorious time, but the fact is they're tough.
Every single minute of your day
is mapped out for you to what time you wake up, to what time you pray, to what time you shower, to what time you eat.
After serving his mission, Chad takes a break from church life. Until one day, he turns on the TV.
All of a sudden, this interview catches my attention, and it was a model who had posed in this Marine calendar, kind of like a beefcake firefighter-esque calendar. And he was the cover model, and the interviewee was all goo-goo gaga over him. And I thought, guys, there's nothing to this guy. Like, what's the big deal, you know? And I thought, it's the men in uniform. How funny. And for a split second, I had this idea of, what if? And within a week, we had our first model.
In the idea for a missionary calendar, Chad sees an opportunity to challenge Mormon conservatism by subverting its most powerful symbol.
I wanted to create a message that I could shout out to the non-Mormon community to say, hey, we're human just like you. And then I wanted to, at the same time, have a message to the Mormon community saying, hey, we're just human. And lighten up.
Men on a Mission hits the shelves on September 10th, 2007, and becomes an overnight sensation.
Bottom line, I wanted to create a product that would defy stereotypes, that would break
Immediately, it was a media circus. My phone was ringing off the hook. It felt like I was a missionary again, that I was doing something positive and good. And I really started to see myself going back to church, because I started getting all this support from other members of the church who were applauding our efforts to say, thank God, somebody has done something to change our outmoded image.
But not all the feedback is positive.
The hate mail started rolling in. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of emails. I feel sorry for you because you've been used by Satan. You poor guy, poor idiot. From Skip.
The church itself is silent, but not for long.
I couldn't believe that what I did was so wrong, that they didn't want me in their church anymore.
When Chad Hardy tries to change perceptions of Mormons by creating a calendar of shirtless missionaries, the Church of Latter-day Saints is not amused.
The church started contacting me almost on a weekly basis, asking me to stop production of the calendar.
Chad refuses, so in July 2008, he's summoned to a disciplinary hearing, otherwise known as a court of love. They're convened to deal with members who commit serious sins and those who publicly oppose the teachings of the church.
They brought me into this room of 12 men. It was quite intimidating. They all stood to greet me, almost like a solemn ritual. They gave me the opportunity to explain what I had done. After I spoke, they deliberated for about 45 minutes, and they welcomed me back into the room. And at that point, they told me that they had heard my story, that they had discussed amongst themselves, and that it is decided that I would be excommunicated.
Excommunication can be handed down for a variety of offenses, from murder to challenging church doctrine. The ruling means Chad is effectively no longer a Mormon. He can't enter temples, wear temple garments, or tithe.
Excommunicated. When those words came out of their mouth, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that what I did was so wrong, that they didn't want me in their church anymore. But at the same time, I felt like this enormous sense of peace. This was the final way the universe was saying, Chad, this way of life is just not for you.
Chad could have applied to be rebaptized after a year, but he chooses not to.
Mormonism has always emphasized sacrificing the individual in order to give to the community. People who try and stand out aren't always looked upon kindly. We value unity. That's a lesson from our history, when Mormons have had to be protective, even defensive.
While some Mormons have been forced to exit the church, others are departing by choice.
One of the main challenges the church is beginning to face is retention of young people. Retention rates have been very high in our community. As many as 90% of the people who are raised LDS in past generations continue to affiliate. Recent studies show that number's dipping in the United States to about 60%. So holding on to Mormon identity and tradition is increasingly a challenge.
Author Joanna Brooks has, in the past, questioned the faith she was born into, but she returned to it.
Many young people, like I did, go through a period of intense questioning, where parts of the tradition, maybe it's conservatism on gender, stance towards gay and lesbian issues, some of the historical questions that come up are distressing, and they may step away for a few years. But when it comes time to raise our own families, many Mormons return, because the tradition is so strong. It's a lovely legacy to pass on, this feeling of belonging and warmth and responsibility that comes with Mormonism.
As Mormonism's prominence rises on the world stage, many of the faithful want to reassure the public that Mormonism and American values are a match made in heaven.
We're very much like the rest of you. We really are.
As it has in the past, the church may need to adapt to the times.
How can we not try and make Mormonism as warm and accepting a place as possible?
Confront the conflicts of its history and its present.
The only way that this can be fixed is if the entire world knows what's going on.
And remind Americans that Mormons are Americans too.
There are a lot of people who don't know if they can trust Mormons. That's really what lies behind, are you really Christian? That is, do you think and feel the way we do, or are you something different inside yourself? I think if people get to know Mormons, they'll come to realize they can be trusted. They are good people. They try hard. They make mistakes. But essentially their hearts are in the right place.